What is happening? What is happening? The look in their eyes changed and they watched in shock. Were they hallucinating? However, it was impossible for them to hallucinate at their level of cultivation. At that moment, they clearly saw the corpse of Xinjia the Great Emperor move, and it was an extremely curious feeling. Their eyes were shining with a frightening divine aurora as they turned their attention there. Yi Futian's body was still emitting sounds of violent rumbling as infinite characters flew out from his body. It seemed as if he had achieved a certain resonance with the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, so that infinite characters were also bursting from the corpse. They floated everywhere inside the mausoleum. At this time, those major figureheads felt a powerful aura that gave rise to a strong sense of danger. Each of them called out to their own Renhuang cultivators and commanded loudly, "Get back! Be careful!" The cultivators around them had no idea what was going on, but they became very alarmed when they heard this command. At the same time, the characters that were floating in the void became even more radiant as frightening divine glory shot out from them. Many felt as if their eyes would be blinded, so they dared not look directly at them. Ah! There were shrill screams as blood oozed from the eyes of those whose cultivation was weak. Instantly, a chaotic atmosphere swept across the divine mausoleum, and those cultivators retreated quickly and took care to avert their eyes. Boom! Those major figureheads sensed the danger and took a step forward. At this moment, those characters, blooming with incomparable divine glory, swept toward this space. Boom, boom, boom. But those major figureheads were prepared for it. The terrifying power of the Great Path almost sealed off the space entirely, blocking the power that had erupted from the sacred remains. However, in the next moment, the divine light of the ancient character penetrated their defenses, slaughtering toward them. Pust! Someone's body was pierced by the divine light. It was as if the defense of the Great Path had no effect at all. "Get out!" a voice commanded, and those major figureheads waved their hands at their people, signaling for them to retreat to the outside, as they could no longer stay in this divine mausoleum. The speed of these top cultivators was unimaginably fast. In just an instant, all of them had retreated toward the entrance at the same time. In this short moment, the divine glory of those ancient characters had flooded the space inside the mausoleum. A violent booming sound came out as the matrix engraved inside the divine mausoleum was activated. The entire mausoleum was spinning like a stunning pagoda. Just like the divine matrix, an unparalleled power was suppressing this space. In the space below, the stone pillars oscillated and began to crack, then started to shatter. The sacred coffin was moving violently. Inside the coffin, infinite characters burst out, and some blasted onto the divine matrix and bumped around inside the mausoleum. As they collided with the space inside, an astonishing sound erupted, causing the entire divine mausoleum to vibrate wildly. Numerous characters blasted on the radiant divine matrix, and soon, cracks began to appear on the matrix itself. As these golden cracks continued to spread and expand, they did so rapidly. Kacha! There was a violent sound, and some characters rushed directly into the divine matrix, so that it began to collapse and disintegrate. The entire divine mausoleum trembled even more violently. Outside, all the major figureheads had already taken their own cultivators to retreat. Even the people from Four Corner Village had withdrawn. Xia Qingyuan was forcibly taken out by old Ma. She didn't even have time to react. Many cultivators were still gathered around the divine mausoleum, and their attention was focused inside the mausoleum at the moment. A golden light was shining on the massive mausoleum, even as the terrifying matrix was spinning. However, at this moment, cracks continued to appear on this supreme matrix, and the outer part of the mausoleum began to crack as well. On the day when the divine mausoleum was constructed, they remembered that the chief had personally proclaimed the sturdiness of it. He was protected by a supremely powerful matrix to prevent the fiercest fluctuations. However, they never dreamed that the divine mausoleum would disintegrate so soon. They could guard against the violent aura fluctuations from other cultivators, but they couldn't guard against the sacred remains inside the coffin. Countless eyes were glued there, and there were chattering noises. What was happening inside the divine mausoleum? The cultivators of various top principalities had retreated from the divine mausoleum. Could it be that even the likes of them could not withstand this terrifying force? They all wanted to know just what was going on inside the mausoleum. Elder, what happened? There were voices, but those major figureheads paid them no mind. They continued to stare at the divine mausoleum, and saw that the divine matrix was beginning to disintegrate with a force that could not be stopped. They knew that the collapse of the mausoleum was inevitable and could not be avoided. If the divine mausoleum were to collapse without setting a proper defense on the outside, what terrible consequences would that be? At this time, in the direction of the domain chief's manor, there were wisps of horrific aura that could be felt, and the two of them were particularly tyrannical. In the next moment, they saw two figures appearing above the divine mausoleum, looking down below. These two were the chief and vice chief, Zhou Muhuang. Get out of here. Now, Chief Zhou said to the massive crowd around him. A terrifying coercion swept out, covering the divine mausoleum. The cultivators that were around also sensed the threat, as soon as the chief reminded them. If the divine mausoleum were to collapse, even the divine matrix would not withstand the power inside. How terrible would that be? And how could they bear it? When they thought of this, their bodies instantly withdrew. They cleared out of this area quickly to avoid being attacked by that force. At the same time, a terrifying coercion from the chief enveloped this divine mausoleum. Bang! Finally, with a loud noise, the divine mausoleum collapsed and shattered. A dazzling light shot from it as infinite characters flew in every direction. Each character contained its own horrific power. The terrifying power contained within these characters swept through everything, attempting to move farther away. However, a figure stood there in the sky above, and the cultivators who were fleeing in the distance saw the chief stood there like a god. An astonishing light screen formed around him, shrouding that area. Those overwhelming characters shot out, but were blocked by that dreadful light screen. At this moment, everyone felt that inside the light screen, there seemed to be a world controlled by the domain chief, and that he was the master of that space. A dreadful divine glory now emerged from the chief, causing the light screen to spin, as if it were about to form a massive matrix on its own. Below, the divine mausoleum had now completely collapsed and shattered, and a sacred coffin was revealed. Inside the sacred coffin, the corpse of Xinjia the great emperor was lying there quietly. It was as if he had never moved. But that terrifying divine glory had indeed exploded from it. What was even more astonishing was that there was a cultivator standing there in front of the sacred coffin. He seemed capable of ignoring the terrifying power coming from the sacred remains inside the coffin, and had even achieved some resonance with it. Countless characters lit up upon his body, full of divine brilliance. The body of the great path was roaring as an extremely tyrannical aura now burst out from him. He's breaking through the realm. Many were trembling. Yi Futian actually using the sacred remains in the coffin to break through the realm. He became the only one who was still cultivating in the divine mausoleum. Not only was he there, but he was also resonating with that power, and using that power to break through his own physical limitations and elevate. How did he do it? Such frightening talent was something that no one in the Shangqing domain could come close to accomplishing. While those major figureheads dared not linger a moment longer, he was busy cultivating inside. Many of them even wondered if all this happened because he was cultivating, and the cultivation had caused such horrific happenstance. At this time, Chief Zhou's eyes were fixed on Yi Futian, who was below. He had the clearest view, because Yi Futian was breaking through the realm right below him. The aura released from Yi Futian was indeed the aura of the Runhuang sixth realm, with a perfect great path. However, Yi Futian's aura of the sixth realm was far more terrifying than the same level's aura from other cultivators. Even those in the seventh realm with perfect great path could hardly compare with the mighty power exuded from Yi Futian from the chief's estimation. When Zhou Muhuang was breaking through, his aura was certainly a lot less intimidating. This man's potential was so great that it was difficult to find his likes in all of Shangqing domain. He had the possibility of becoming the topmost existence among giants. Furthermore, he had even achieved resonance with the corpse of Xinjia the great emperor. Who knew what would happen next? Boom, boom, boom. Yi Futian's body was roaring, And when the chief sensed the power inside Yi Futian's body, he was even more astonished. Is he refining his body? The chief felt that Yi Futian's breakthrough this time was different from other cultivators. The body of the Great Path seemed to have become a truly divine body, which was terrifying. All the power of the Great Path was erupting from his body. It was as if his physical body was the body of Wei, and that he had completely become one with the Wei. At this moment, the chief's eyes showed extreme disbelief. It was as if he wanted to see through Yi Futian, but could not. What secrets were harbored by this cultivator from the original realm? What the spectators didn't know at this moment was that Yi Futian was also suffering in agony from his cultivation. Although he had broken the bonds of the current cultivation plane, a monster wave was forming in his life palace. There seemed to be a shadow of ancient God standing in front of him in the illusory world. What the spectators didn't know at this moment was that Yi Futian was also suffering in agony from his cultivation. Although he had broken the bonds of the current cultivation plane, a monster wave was forming in his life palace. There seemed to be a shadow of ancient God standing in front of him in the illusory world. The endless characters and runes flooded his life palace as well. At this moment, the world tree was transformed into a towering divine tree and created a new world. As Yi Futian sat down under the tree, his face appeared in the new world, as if he had been incorporated into it. Yi Futian didn't understand why this was happening. Nonetheless, the impact created by the collision of these two forces was earth-shattering. Yi Futian would not be able to withstand it if it happened inside his physical body. He might even be annihilated right away. Fortunately, the clash occurred in his life palace. The crowd witnessed an astonishing scene at this moment. Xinjia, the Great Emperor's body, which was inside the violently vibrating divine casket, slowly rose and was suspended in midair. Yi Futian's body was completely enveloped in innumerable floating runes. After that, the sacred remains moved forward in the direction of Yi Futian's body. What is happening? Everyone's heart was pounding rapidly as they witnessed this scene. Yi Futian resonated with the sacred remains of Xinjia, the Great Emperor. Was he trying to snatch the sacred remains for himself now? A beam of blinding light shot forth. Much to everyone's astonishment, the sacred remains began to cling to Yi Futian's body. Yi Futian seemed to be fully integrated with the runes, and the sacred remains of Xinjia, the Great Emperor, crept into Yi Futian's body with the aid of the runes. A lot of people were dumbstruck. Not only did Yi Futian generate a resonance, but he was also integrating himself with the sacred remains of Xinjia, the Great Emperor now. Under everyone's watch, Xinjia, the Great Emperor's body really maneuvered into Yi Futian's body and disappeared. Yi Futian glowed with terrifying divine light, with countless ancient characters engraved on his skin. It seemed that he had merged with the sacred remains of Xinjia, the Great Emperor. Did he devour Xinjia, the Great Emperor's body? The incessant rumbling noise hadn't stopped. Even the domain chief was stopped in his tracks. The light screen released by him faded away as he lowered his head to look at Yi Futian. What on earth just happened? Why could Yi Futian merge with Xinjia, the Great Emperor's body? How was it possible for him to achieve that even if he could generate some kind of resonance? The domain chief watched everything with his own eyes, yet still couldn't figure out how Yi Futian made it happen. He gaped at the silver-haired man below and didn't know how to handle the situation. At this point, the intimidating pressure disappeared. The master cultivators all popped up in different directions and stepped forward, while staring at Yi Futian from above with a grim look on their faces. Nonetheless, Yi Futian hadn't woken up yet. He seemed to be cultivating still, a ferocious noise coming out of his body. One person proceeded toward Yi Futian. It was old Ma. He certainly understood that Yi Futian was in a dangerous situation and was very likely to be attacked right now. After all, Yi Futian had consumed the sacred remains of Xinjia, the Great Emperor, which every master cultivator hankered after. If Yi Futian really consumed it for himself, these mighty figures would never take it lying down. They would definitely gang up on Yi Futian. Old Ma had a bad feeling. The situation didn't look rosy for Yi Futian. However, none of them knew that Yi Futian had no command over what just happened. He didn't intend to consume the sacred remains of Xinjia, the great emperor at all. On the contrary, Xinjia the great emperor chose to attach his body to Yi Futian. Yi Futian was suffering tremendous pain right now and couldn't extricate himself from the situation. Domain Chief. The Donghuang Imperial Palace placed the sacred remains of Xinjia the great emperor here, so everyone in the Shangqing domain could cultivate with it. How should we deal with this now? The clan leader of the Nanhai family asked. He certainly would not let Yi Futian take Xinjia the great emperor's body away. None of them achieved any real comprehension. How could they let Yi Futian be the sole beneficiary? On top of that, Yi Futian used the power of the sacred remains to break the bonds of the cultivation plane and advanced to the sixth order. Domain Chief. Xinjia the great emperor's body was bestowed on the Shangqing domain by the Donghuang Imperial Palace to facilitate cultivation. Everyone here saw with their eyes that Yi Futian was the only one who could comprehend the sacred remains ever since the divine mausoleum was built. He even generated a resonance with Xinjia the great emperor just now. In this case, why don't we help him succeed? Yi Futian is cultivating in Four Corner Village and should be treated as a member of the Shangqing domain as well. Old Ma lifted his chin and said. Although his voice was flat, he was secretly worried that Yi Futian would be in grave danger. Who said that we didn't comprehend anything? Someone refuted. Moreover, the sacred remains were bestowed on the Shangqing domain by the Donghuang Imperial Palace. How can he keep it to himself? The tension was palpable in the divine mausoleum. Old Ma stood by Yi Futian's side and looked around to scan the crowd. Suddenly, a forceful spatial storm formed and opened a door of space in the void. Watch out. He is running away, someone said coldly. Before the voice faded, Old Ma pulled Yi Futian and stepped across a door of space. Many people turned to the domain chief, surprised that he didn't intervene. Nonetheless, the clan leader of the Nanhai family and Overlord Shengyu both rushed forward with their arms outstretched. They pulled the door of space open and followed Old Ma and Yi Futian over there. Other master cultivators also left the divine mausoleum right away to chase after them. On the other hand, many cultivators stared at the rest of the people from Four Corner Village with a malevolent look on their faces. This is solely about the sacred remains. We should not implicate innocent people. Duan Tianxiong from the ancient royal family of Duan spoke up. Other people had no choice but to drop the idea of attacking the cultivators from Four Corner Village. Let's go to the Four Corner Continent, Duan Tianxiong said. He waved his hand at the crowd. With Zhou Muhuang by his side, the domain chief gazed at the place where Yi Futian and Old Ma had disappeared. No one could figure out what he was thinking. Let's go to the Four Corner Continent, said the domain chief. They immediately left the divine mausoleum as well. Although Old Ma and Yi Futian escaped through the door of space, they had nowhere else but Four Corner Village to go. They were watched and chased by so many master cultivators from various top forces. There was no way for them to get out of their clutches straight away. Before long, the divine mausoleum was swept by the terrifying energy currents. All the mighty figures from top forces left the area in long strides. Other famous cultivators pulled out soon as well. Countless cultivators outside of the divine mausoleum stared blankly at the vacated spot where the divine casket used to be. Everything changed so fast that it almost felt surreal. No one had ever thought that this would happen when the divine mausoleum was built not so long ago. Yi Futian took the sacred remains away. Nevertheless, Yi Futian couldn't really steal Xinjia the great emperor's body under the master cultivator's watch. The mighty figures in the Shangqing domain would skin him alive if he integrated himself with the sacred remains for real. Bursts of horrifying energy sprung up in the sky above Four Corner City. With a loud bang, the entire city quaked violently. The light screen of space that Old Ma set up to surround Four Corner City shattered at once as tremendous might pressing upon the city. Beams of blinding light pierced through the void, heading directly toward Four Corner Village. Are you going to get the entire Four Corner Village into trouble? A cold and intimidating voice rang out. More pressure came from the sky and overwhelmed the city. Every cultivator inside Four Corner City was trembling in fear at this moment. What on earth happened? Didn't the domain chief summon the extraordinary cultivators to the Shangqing continent, located in the upper nine heavens? Why did old Ma flee back with formidable enemies chasing after him? The scary divine light shot directly into Four Corner Village and disappeared. More and more people arrived and surrounded Four Corner City. That being said, the master cultivators didn't really set foot inside the village. Instead, they stayed in midair and watched the village from above. Old Ma couldn't break free, since they had trapped him here already. Even so, they still held reverence for the master in Four Corner Village. Therefore, none of them were willing to be the first one to barge into the village. They wanted to wait for other people to step up. A succession of powerful cultivators arrived in the sky above Four Corner City. It was obvious that there were even more on the way. Everyone in the city was shaking in their shoes. What on earth just happened? Four Corner Village would be obliterated with so many hostile cultivators if these people decided to launch an attack. Besides, it was apparent that they were enemies who came with malicious intent. A lot of confused people were eager for an answer. The people who migrated to Four Corner City from outer realms were especially worried, since they would be affected the most if Four Corner City was destroyed. In addition, they didn't know if the master cultivators would choose to fight right over their heads. The entire city would be flattened if a battle broke out here. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Four Corner Village was quiet and peaceful as usual. However, as soon as old Ma and Yi Futian came back, a swarm of people followed them and surrounded the village. Old Ma took Yi Futian and headed directly to the private school. Four Corner Village was quiet and peaceful as usual. However, as soon as old Ma and Yi Futian came back, a swarm of people followed them and surrounded the village. Old Ma took Yi Futian and headed directly to the private school. They arrived at the private school in a short moment. Yi Futian seemed to be suffering from tremendous pain right now. Loud and scary noises were still coming out of his body. What happened? Several people rushed over to old Ma and Yi Futian. Master, Fang Xiyuan, Little Ling, and other teenagers sprinted over to check on Yi Futian. Old Ma faced the school's gate and spoke to the man inside. Master, Yi Futian consumed a sacred body. It was the corpse of Xinjia, the great emperor from many years ago. Now people from numerous groups have chased us here and surrounded the village. Old Ma gave a brief account of what happened before. He was well aware that it was meaningless to argue with the master cultivators under the circumstances before. Those mighty figures would never let Yi Futian go. If Yi Futian stayed there, he would undoubtedly be killed by them since they were determined to retrieve the sacred remains of Xinjia, the great emperor, even if it meant disemboweling Yi Futian. For that reason, old Ma had no choice but to take his chances and bring Yi Futian back to Four Corner Village. That being said, he knew that he would not be able to leave if the domain chief stepped in to stop him when he created the door of space. However, for some inexplicable reasons, the domain chief let him go and gave him a chance to leave through the space passage. Perhaps the domain chief was confident that Yi Futian and old Ma would be captured in the end anyway, so it didn't matter for them to run away now. Beams of divine light came out of the school and focused on Yi Futian's body. The light swaddled Yi Futian tightly and pulled him into the school straight away. In a flash, Yi Futian disappeared in front of old Ma. Old Ma stared at the school. As worried as he was, there was nothing else he could do at this point. He certainly realized that Yi Futian was in grave danger for consuming the sacred remains. He had no choice but to ask the master for help. Inside the private school, Yi Futian's body floated in midair. An old man with an ethereal quality appeared in front of him. Master, Yi Futian opened his eyes and moaned. I can't help you with your condition. This is something you have to do on your own, the master said to Yi Futian. Yi Futian nodded and closed his eyes again. The imperial glory glowed intensely from his body, and the rumbling noise reverberated through the school, as if his body of Wei could explode at any second. It was a grim and dreadful scene. A spasm of pain made Yi Futian contort his face. He seemed to be struggling for his life. Get the fuck out of here, he bellowed with rage. Countless brilliant runes and characters emerged from his body one after another. It was as though they were being detached. Immediately after that, a ray of golden divine light shone brilliantly and a figure was propelled out of Yi Futian's body. It was Xinjia, the great emperor. Phew! Yi Futian opened his eyes and stared at the dazzling sacred remains. A sense of fear still possessed him when he thought about the experience. The sacred remains of Xinjia, the great emperor, attempted to destroy his life palace. In the past, the world tree in Yi Futian's life palace could devour and digest any kind of treasure, including divine items. However, it failed to do so this time. Not only that, it was barely able to kick out the sacred remains after a hard and protracted struggle. If the fight went on, Yi Futian and his life palace might be obliterated. As soon as Xinjia, the great emperor's body emerged, a burst of blinding divine light swept across space. The light dimmed gradually and gently poured over the sacred remains. The divine body laid flat, as though it was an ordinary corpse. Only moments earlier, this corpse unleashed enough power almost to take Yi Futian's life. Master, I apologize for troubling you. Yi Futian slightly bowed to the master. He wasn't cheerful about advancing to the next stage. He would never choose to consume the sacred remains if the situation was in his hands. He was well aware of how much trouble it would bring. With his cultivation level and experience, he couldn't control or take away the sacred remains. Now he had no choice but to hand over the sacred remains. Otherwise, he might drag Four Corner Village into trouble. At this point, more and more cultivators had come to Four Corner City, including Zhou Muhuang. They hovered in the sky above the city. Muhuang, where is the chief? Someone asked Zhou Muhuang, who was just arriving. He is right behind. I got here first, Zhou Muhuang replied. Yi Futian snatched the sacred remains for himself, and Old Ma brought him back to Four Corner Village. How should we deal with them? One person threw out the obvious question. The cultivators in Four Corner City started to realize what happened upon hearing their conversation. Yi Futian snatched the sacred remains for himself? I believe that Yi Futian will return the sacred remains. We can decide what to do with him later if he refuses, Zhou Muhuang said. Let me go in and take a look first. Good. Everyone nodded in agreement. Then, Zhou Muhuang walked into Four Corner Village in long strides. Within seconds, a lot of people in the village sensed Zhou Muhuang's formidable energy. In the meantime, a voice boomed. This is Zhou Muhuang from the Domain Chief's Manor. Nice to meet everyone in Four Corner Village. Old Ma and Yi Futian both walked over. They stood on the ground and raised their heads to look at Zhou Muhuang in the sky. Vice Chief, Yi Futian greeted him. Zhou Muhuang looked down and said to Yi Futian, almost all the cultivators from the outer realms are here now. They are gathering above Four Corner City. Yi Futian's expression was somber, even though it was not beyond his expectation. You generated a resonance with the sacred remains, and took them with you. Even though the cultivation opportunity was your own fortune, I'm sure you understand the consequences under such circumstances, Zhou Muhuang said. Yi Futian didn't make a sound, but he obviously understood what Zhou Muhuang meant. Just when he was about to respond, Zhou Muhuang added, but we have one solution left right now. What solution? Yi Futian asked. Zhou Muhuang looked directly into Yi Futian's eyes, and transmitted his voice into his head. I invited you to join the Domain Chief's Manor before. My sister is also very fond of you. The Domain Chief's Manor will handle the situation for you, if you are willing to become a member. A surprised look came over Yi Futian's face. He certainly remembered that the Domain Chief's Manor had repeatedly tried to rope him in. Unlike the Domain Chief's Manor of the Donghua Domain, the Domain Chief's Manor of the Shangqing Domain seemed quite confident in beating him. Did they want him because they favored his potential? Regardless, Yi Futian obviously would not accept such an invitation. Thank you very much, Vice Chief. However, since I am a member of Four Corner Village, I naturally cannot join the Domain Chief's Manor. I'm afraid that I have to disappoint you, Yi Futian replied through voice transmission. Zhou Muhuang gazed at Yi Futian and asked, have you thought it through? Yes, Yi Futian nodded and said. He would never join the Domain Chief's Manor, even after he returned the sacred remains. Good. Zhou Muhuang replied in a flat voice. In that case, you should take care of the mess by yourself. Then, he turned around and walked out of Four Corner Village with a stern look on his face. He invited Yi Futian on many occasions, Yet this young man didn't show any respect for him. Moreover, did Yi Futian really think that everything would be over and return to normal once he surrendered the sacred remains? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. After Zhou Muhuang left, Yi Futian said to those around him, "I'll go and deal with this." After Zhou Muhuang left, Yi Futian said to those around him, "I'll go and deal with this." "How?" Old Ma asked him. "I didn't deliberately plunder the sacred remains of Xinjiao the great emperor. The sacred remains were guarded by the entire Shangqing domain and couldn't be taken away at will. Now it will be returned to them," said Yi Futian. Old Ma nodded. He knew very well that the sacred remains had been watched over by all the top figures in the domain, and it was pretty much impossible for anyone to take it for themselves. Outside of Four Corner Village, after Zhou Muhuang came out, everyone's attention turned to him. But Zhou Muhuang merely said, "Everyone, take care of this matter however you see fit." When his voice fell, people from all forces suddenly had a cold expression on their faces as they stared in the direction of Four Corner Village. Did Zhou Muhuang mean that he would not interfere, and they should do whatever needed to be done? This made them wonder. What did Zhou Muhuang and Futian talk about after he entered the village? Before, the domain chief's manner was still quite smitten with Yi Futian. However, now it seemed that they were not going to get involved after all. Of course, they could see that the chief did not detain Old Ma, was giving Yi Futian a chance to breathe. But none of this mattered anymore. There were more and more people inside Four Corner City. Major figures had arrived one after another, including the cultivators from the ancient royal family of Duan, which had brought along the others in Four Corner Village, as well as Xia Qingyuan. Seeing the situation here, all of them wore a worrisome look. The situation seemed very unfavorable. The people in Four Corner City kind of knew what had happened. Yi Futian had, in fact, seized the sacred remains from the Shangqing continent, which ignited public outrage. This proud son of heaven, who made his name in Four Corner Village, was causing upheavals everywhere he went. There were all kinds of top figures in the Shangqing continent, including major forces, and Yi Futian had snatched the sacred remains. At this time, someone cast a glance at Feng Huan and the others from Four Corner Village. "Go in and tell them to turn him over. If any of you insist on sheltering Yi Futian, we'll have no choice but to go in ourselves." Both Blind Tai and Feng Huan looked grave. The current situation was indeed quite disadvantageous to them. At this moment, several people walked out of the village, and the person in the lead was Yi Futian. Old Ma followed next to him, and behind them were the sacred remains, shrouded and bound by traces of magical power. The sight surprised many. Hadn't the sacred remains been swallowed by Yi Futian? And here they were again. Could Yi Futian be swallowing and heaving up the sacred remains at will? Moreover, he was able to control the terrifying power of the sacred remains and brought them outside. Had Yi Futian already refined the power within the sacred remains? Yi Futian stepped into the void and surveyed the crowd. Some issues occurred while I was cultivating a while back. It was not my intention to take away the sacred remains. I apologize for the trouble that led all of you here. I will return sacred remains momentarily and send them to the Shangqing continent. As Yi Futian finished speaking, everyone's eyes were on him. Those sharp eyes seemed to want to see through him. An immeasurable pressure permeated from the void to oppress this vast area outside of Four Corner Village. "How did you manage to take away the sacred remains?" the Nanhai family clan leader questioned him. The strong pressure in his voice directly descended upon Yi Futian. Yi Futian could resonate with the sacred remains, and even swallow the sacred remains. This meant that there must be a secret method hidden on him. Naturally, he wanted to know just how Yi Futian was able to achieve this impossible deed. He and all the others from other principalities, who were standing high above the sky overlooking Yi Futian's, also wanted to know the answer. It was difficult before to get an answer out of him by force, but now was a great opportunity to interrogate him once and for all. Could they master Yi Futian's method so that they too could comprehend something from the sacred remains? This has to do with the methods of my own cultivation. Forgive me for not being able to divulge, responded Yi Futian. The sacred remains have been swallowed by you already. Now even if you release it, who knows if you are controlling it? The clan leader of the Nanhai family continued. His gaze never left Yi Futian. I think so as well. A voice echoed the sentiment. It was the great elder of the demon cloud. His eyes rimmed with a solitary chilling light. He stood high above the sky and stared at Yi Futian below. Everyone experienced a chill. The cultivators from the other forces obviously didn't want to let it go either. Several cultivators spoke up, and all for one purpose: to force Yi Futian to tell them how he could resonate with the sacred remains. However, Yi Futian had no way to give them an answer. Through my own cultivation, I was able to comprehend the power of the sacred remains. I developed a certain resonance with the power of the sacred remains. This kind of cultivation method cannot be duplicated. All you elders are major cultivators in your own right, and have your own methods of cultivation. I believe you, too, will eventually find a way to comprehend the sacred remains in your own ways. Although Yi Futian was extremely displeased, he had no choice but to control it, for the time being, suppressing what he really thought of them. However, his words were clearly not convincing enough. Those gazes that stared at him seemed to want to completely extract his secrets and control his method of comprehending the sacred remains. All the cultivators in the Shangqing domain, myself included, could not control the sacred remains, except you alone were able to swallow the sacred remains and took it away all by yourself. Now, how could we simply believe it was just a cultivation method? An indifferent voice was rebuking him. Clearly, none of them intended to let Yi Futian off the hook. Then, what do the elders have in mind? Yi Futian asked, looking up at the people in the void. These top figures stood arrogantly in the air, looking down at him, indifference in their eyes. The domain chief did not come this time, and was represented by the vice chief, Zhou Muhuang. However, he seemed to be just an observer at this time, quietly watching on the sideline. Yi Futian understood that Zhou Muhuang would not intervene. In the village just now, Zhou Muhuang's attempt was probably to give him a chance to get out of it. Perhaps he had foreseen this predicament. Take a walk with us, said the clan leader of the Nanhai family. Not only did he intend to get the sacred remains back, but he also wanted to take Yi Futian with them. He had plundered the sacred remains and escaped back to Four Corner Village. Now, he thought he could end the matter by simply returning the sacred remains? It was not going to be so easy for him. Yi Futian fell silent. He looked at the clan leader of the Nanhai family and thought that if he were to promise to go with them, would he ever come back alive? These people wanted to know the secret of his comprehension of the sacred remains, and they would no doubt probe into his innermost secrets. Therefore, if Yi Futian agreed, it would result in his almost certain death. Furthermore, he trusted none of these people. However, even if he disagreed, could he resisted the will of the cultivators in the entire Shangqing domain as represented by them? If he couldn't change their minds, resistance was the only way. Please forgive me for not agreeing to your request, Yi Futian replied after a moment of silence. When he finished speaking, the space suddenly became even more repressed. Traces of extremely powerful coercion permeated the entire Four Corner Village, inside and out. In the distance, the cultivators of Four Corner City sighed when they saw the terrifying group in the void. It was as if all the cultivators of an entire domain had deemed Yi Futian as their enemy and came together to take him down. How could he resist a force like that? Everyone, the taking of the sacred remains was not intentional. Now that it is to be returned to you, none of this is necessary, Old Ma said, stood not far behind Yi Futian, looking at the cultivators in the void. Did all of them intend to take down Yi Futian? Perhaps this was what they meant when they say the tallest tree always got its top blown off first. It's just asking him to come with us and talk. What are you so afraid of? The Nanhai family said nonchalantly. No one from our Four Corner Village can be taken away so casually, erupted Old Ma. However, facing the titans of the Shangqing domain, even Old Ma appeared slightly insignificant at the moment. Any one of these cultivators was someone who could dominate an era on their own. When they heard Old Ma's words, all of them appeared somewhat in disdain. They merely glanced at him indifferently and said, If Four Corner Village wants to get involved, don't blame us later. After that he asked, who among you will go get him? None of these top figures wanted to make a move on Futian. After all, it was not so honorable to take down someone younger than they were. So they hinted for someone in the younger generations from various forces to take action. Several cultivators stepped out at the same time to answer his call, and they were all top figures from every one of the forces present. Among them, there was Emoku of the Demon Cloud. He possessed a perfect great path in the 8th realm, which was the same as Blind Tai. Looking down at Futian, Emoku said, I don't know what power you gained by devouring the sacred remains. After that, he raised his hand and grabbed towards the sky below. This terrifying great hand was like a demonic handprint. It flashed a terrible dark golden light, and descended in front of Futian, grabbing at him. Blind Tai and the others mobilized at the same time. A terrifying golden hammer exploded with astounding divine light, sweeping out as the hammer smashed on that demonic handprint. A frightening sound was heard as a horrific storm swept through the surrounding area. At the same time, many cultivators from Four Corner Village stepped out and stood behind Futian, staring at the figure in the void. The clan leader of the Nanhai family sneered when he saw them. Four Corner Village wanted to get involved? If so, that would be even better. Boom! A horrific aura permeated the atmosphere, and dominating figures stepped out from the void one after the other. Muyanlan was also among them. This time, his opponents were cultivators from Four Corner Village. They were his former acquaintances. Watching the cultivators from all sides coming at them, Old Ma sighed inside. The sacred remains had been returned, but were they still reluctant to drop the whole thing? Four Corner Village owed Futian a favor, so in any case, they could not let the others take him away. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Feng Gai, Blind Tai, Feng Huan, Shi Kuei, and other cultivators stepped forward as they came to Futian's side, one by one. At the same time, the pressure from all major principalities descended in the space. Feng Gai, Blind Tai, Feng Huan, Shi Kuei, and other cultivators stepped forward as they came to Futian's side, one by one. At the same time, the pressure from all major principalities descended in the space. In a moment, a terrifying coercion hovered above Four Corner Village. Moreover, as the head of each major principality directed their glance at the crowd, many of them realized something significant. The strength of Four Corner Village was indeed awesome. The cultivators surrounding Futian were upper Runhuang with perfect great paths, who could almost compete with the top enchanting figures from the Shangqing domain. They even had a thought that since today's confrontation would result in a grudge with Four Corner Village, it would be better to. Now that Four Corner Village was trying to protect Futian with all their might, it provided the excuse they need to get rid of this anomaly in the Shangqing domain. In the void, an extremely radiant picture of the domineering golden rock appeared, covering the sky and obscuring the sun. Feng Gai yelled, Muyanlan, so you're finally attacking the village? We have to take this man with us. Muyanlan said loud and clear in the void. He stood there in arrogance. As his voice faded, the brilliant divine wings of the golden-winged rock, that were trembling behind him, turned into sharp blades and slashed down, as if to bisect the space. Feng Gai snorted coldly as he stepped forward, blocking the position where Muyanlan had struck. When the terrifying divine wing of the golden rock chopped down in front of him, they could not touch his body, and were stymied by an incredible power. This was his absolute domain. All the other powerful cultivators also took action. With Blind Tai and the others guarded the area around him, each manning a position. A massive ancient god appeared, swinging his hammer towards the sky to smash the void. Therefore, a majestic sight appeared in the sky above Four Corner Village. It was as if there were ancient gods protecting Futian. Futian, standing in the middle, was warmed to his core when he saw what they were doing. This incident was entirely an accident and not intentional. He did not expect to bring this crisis upon Four Corner Village. If it couldn't be resolved, he would have no choice but to go with them. In the sky above, there was a magnificent vision behind a beautiful figure. It seemed that a statue of the thousand-hand goddess appeared, and those palm prints madly overlapped and turned into a gigantic goddess seal, slamming towards Yi Futian. This person was the daughter of the Nanhai family, Nanhai Qianxue. A bonfire of anger was burning inside Yi Futian's heart. The first person to speak was the head of the Nanhai family. The Muyan family had betrayed Four Corner Village for the Nanhai family, so the people who most wanted to move against the village were the cultivators from the Nanhai family. Divine glory was flowing upon Yi Futian's body, as boundlessly radiant peacock divine wings now appeared behind him. A monstrous roar of the great path came out from inside of him. It was as if he had incarnated to a peerless divine body with a horrific aura. Previously, he had already broken through to the sixth realm with a perfect great path. His body was now terrific after having undergone the transformation endowed by the sacred remains of Xinjia, the great emperor. Coupled with the divine heart of the peacock that was already inside of him, his own life force was incredibly vibrant. Instantly, a divine light swept out from him with piercing rays. Even an existence of the seventh realm, such as Nanhai Qianxue, felt an immediate threat of danger. The power erupting from that body of the great path alone was no longer any lesser than hers. Behind Yi Futian, radiant and divine peacock wings fluttered. Their colorful divine light dazzled beyond words. In the next moment, Yi Futian's body was gone in a flash as he went straight toward the gigantic handprint of the goddess, unleashed by Nanhai Qianxue. It left behind a brilliant divine glow in the sky. The momentum of its splendor was unstoppable. "Watch out!" The clan leader of the Nanhai family let out a cry as he felt the power erupting from Yi Futian at this moment. At the same time, a strong pressure fell directly upon them. This was almost at the same moment when Yi Futian's attack tore through Nanhai Qianxue's handprint and smashed it into smithereens. Without the slightest hesitation, his body continued rushing towards Nanhai Qianxue. Nanhai Qianxue felt a brilliant peacock shadow swoop down, and a finger pointed at her. It turned into an infinite divine sword light, shattering all existence. Boom! A mark of the earth now stood in front of Nanhai Qianxue, but when Yi Futian's finger landed, everything was destroyed. Crackling sounds from an explosion were heard as Nanhai Qianxue's body flew back. Yi Futian's palm followed her and slammed down, wanting to take her down on the spot. But at this moment, an unstoppable coercion fell upon Yi Futian, blasting him. This palm was like the power from the gods of heaven. Even the firmament trembled violently as it landed on Yi Futian. Nothing was able to block this strike, and all of his defenses were immediately shattered. Yi Futian's body was knocked back instantly. His whole body shook as blood came out of his mouth, and his face was pale. When he fell back after the blast, his eyes fixed at the figure high above the sky. The clan leader of the Nanhai family had attacked him. The blow from a cultivator of this level was powerful beyond description. If Yi Futian's own physical body were not already so strong, this blow would have pulverized all his internal organs. A supple and gentle power supported Yi Futian's body. As old Ma appeared next to Yi Futian, his eyes swept towards the clan leader of the Nanhai family, who was in the void, said, "If you wanted to fight, then fight. Why wait until now?" Everyone else stopped their fights subsequently. With such powerful characters in action, their battles were rather inconsequential. The clan leader of the Nanhai family glanced at Nanhai Qianxue. Yi Futian's blow had caused a few blood streaks to appear on Nanhai Qianxue's body. If he hadn't intervened, Yi Futian would have been able to take Nanhai Qianxue down in a short time. His terrifying combat power frightened people like them. We have given Four Corner Village all due respect. If Four Corner Village still insists on getting involved, we will show no mercy. The clan leader of the Nanhai family ignored Old Ma, but chose to threaten them coldly instead. Old Ma raised his head to look into the void as the strong pressure came crashing down. Besides the clan leader of the Nanhai family who acted, all the others were powerful existents, standing at the peak of the 9 heavens. This was a pointless battle. Four Corner Village simply had no ability to resist these forces. Yi Futian still had traces of blood at the corners of his mouth. His eyes were trained on the head of the Nanhai family as he said, "Old Ma, you guys go back." He knew he would not be going with these people. However, If they were determined to take him by force and had no way to resist, there was no need to involve the entire village. Old Ma looked at Futian. It was an obvious dilemma for him. He looked at Blind Tai and the others beside him and said, "Leave now. I will go with Futian." Since the village couldn't be involved, the only option was for him to go with Futian. "None of you are going." At this time, a voice came from Four Corner Village, which startled everyone. Old Ma turned his eyes in the direction of the village, but saw no one. He only heard the voice. As for whose voice it belonged to, it couldn't be more clear. "Teacher," Old Ma called out, discernible respect in his voice. Regardless of his level of cultivation, his respect for the teacher was from the heart. But given the predicament they were in today, perhaps even the teacher had no way of solving it. All the other cultivators were also looking in the direction of the village. The head of the Nanhai family, and the others frowned slightly. Was the teacher finally going to intervene? If so, it was even better. Then, all of Four Corner Village could be captured in one go. It's fine if you wanted the sacred remains, but why do you want to take away someone from the village? In that case, the sacred remains stay, and our people too. An elusive voice came out from inside the village, causing many people's eyes to sharpen slightly. What kind of arrogance was this? For some reason, the people of Four Corner Village were electrified when they heard this voice. Their fists clenched tightly, and their blood was boiling hot. The teacher was the patron saint of the village, but he was also someone from legends. He cared not for the daily affairs of the village, merely focusing on teaching the youngsters. As for the true strength of the teacher, it was something that only existed in ancient legends inside the village. But no one knew just how strong the teacher actually was. Before entering the cultivating world, several titans had visited Four Corner Village once, and after meeting the teacher, they recognized the status of Four Corner Village. But they still had no idea how strong the teacher was. And now was the teacher finally going to take action? He had deemed that no one could leave the village, and that the sacred remains would stay. The clan leader of the Nanhai family, and other powerful cultivators, felt his strong sense of confidence when they heard what he had to say. No one dared to be so arrogant in the face of top figures from all sides. No one in the Shangqing domain dared to act like this, not even the chief himself. Now this teacher from Four Corner Village was the first one to speak so irreverently. "I'm afraid that even the teacher will not be able to keep it," the clan leader of the Nanhai family said. "Do you want to try it?" the voice inside said again. Wisps of breath came out of Four Corner Village, trailing toward the corpse of Xinjia the Great Emperor. This slightly surprised many present. They saw the brilliant light shining on the corpse of Xinjia the Great Emperor, the golden corpse that was floating in the air. What's going on? Everyone's heart was beating violently. Even those titans were concentrating their attention there. How could the teacher of Four Corner Village be able to control the corpse of Xinjia the Great Emperor? Unless it was him who taught Futian? At this moment, everyone couldn't help but remember some of those rumors concerning the teacher of Four Corner Village. Hundreds of years ago, legend had it that the Great Emperor had once sought the way and cultivated in this village. Under the gaze of numerous eyes, that golden body floating in the void now stood up, erected in the sky. In the next moment, those frightening eyes suddenly opened. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2182, God's Power. Chapter 2182. God's Power. The sacred remains had opened their eyes. All the cultivators trembled inside, their eyes unable to move away from the corpse of Xinjia the Great Emperor. These sacred remains seemed to have been resurrected, surrounded by countless divine lights. A series of characters appeared next to the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, blooming with dazzling divine splendor. How can it be? Those major figureheads fixed their attention on the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, perturbed by the implications. All of them had personally tried to comprehend the sacred remains. They were therefore keenly aware of the terror that contained within it. Control issues aside, they couldn't even comprehend it. But now, the sacred remains seemed to have resurrected, and were being controlled by someone else. The wisps of aura that permeated from Four Corner Village dispelled any doubts that the person who controlled the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor was the teacher from Four Corner Village. Since the sacred remains were given to the Shangqing domain by the imperial palace and taken by Yi Futian, from this day forward, they belonged to Yi Futian. If the domain chief's manor of the Shangqing domain and other forces have any doubts, you may come and try to seize the sacred remains, or you may go to the imperial palace and ask the great emperor himself. A quiet and ethereal voice was heard. It made everyone's hearts beat wildly. Those who disagreed may come and fight for it, or go to the imperial palace to ask Donghuang the Great. What that calm voice expressed was tremendous confidence. It was a confidence that the great emperor himself would have agreed with his declaration. The great emperor had once come to Four Corner Village to issue an injunction prohibiting major figureheads outside from setting foot on the Four Corner continent, further prohibiting outside cultivators from harming the villagers inside. It was easy to see that the great emperor was partial to Four Corner Village. Coupled with the words just spoken by the teacher, it was almost certain that the teacher personally knew Donghuang the Great. And this had been before Donghuang the Great had his current standing, at a time when he was still just a runhuang. They didn't know how far back they went, but the teacher seemed absolutely confident in what he said. Beneath Four Corner Mountain, countless cultivators in Four Corner City looked over and heard what the teacher said. The voice couldn't be more tranquil, but seemed to contain unparalleled confidence and strength. On this day, the cultivators from the Shangqing domain intended to lay siege upon Four Corner Village. Did the teacher intend to destroy the enemy by himself? All of them recalled the rumors that circulated about the teacher. Suddenly on the Four Corner Mountain, there was an extreme sense of oppression. All those figureheads stared at the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor and wondered, could the teacher truly and completely control the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor? Even though the teacher and the Great Emperor had a history together, the corpse of Xinjiao the Great Emperor was given to Shangqing domain, and it is not up to the teacher to decide to whom it belongs. An indifferent voice was now heard, and it was the great elder of the demon cloud, who was exuding a terrifying aura. A horrifying demon cloud appeared behind him, like some phantom of a demon god, suppressing this corner of the world. Boom! Like an ancient demon god of bygone ages, a mighty power erupted from him, summoning a frightening spear of the demon god, covering the sky and the sun, piercing the void. A black track was left in the firmament, stabbing down at the sacred remains from high above the sky. Bang! An astonishing sound came out, and a frightening aura swept across the sky toward the vast area far away. The demon god's spear pierced the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor. It seemed as if it had penetrated the body, and its terrifying destructive power attempted to tear open everything in its path. However, to everyone's shock, they discovered that the golden body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor was no longer flesh and blood, but was instead a divine body transformed by infinite characters. A dreadful power firmly locked onto that spear of the demon god, and started to destroy it little by little. The hearts of many were beating erratically. Such a horrific attack did not affect the sacred remains, for the remains were no longer an ordinary physical body, but now an immortal and indestructible divine form. The great elder of the demon cloud saw this, and realized it was useless to deal with the sacred remains directly. He stretched out his palm, and made a grabbing motion toward where Yi Futian was, wanting to take down Yi Futian first. An overwhelming mighty power descended on Yi Futian, and he felt as if he was suffocating to death. However, at this time, a figure appeared in front of Yi Futian, and it was the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor. The infinite divine brilliance of the ancient characters was released from his body, drowning the void in this corner of the sky with ever-dazzling divine light. The crowd saw characters flying out towards the heavens. Be careful! Everyone's expression revealed shock. It was as if they had entered a spatial tunnel, and those characters were like invisible waves that brought everyone into the world of another space. Yi Futian and the others disappeared. Only the cultivators from all sides were still here, and of course the body of the Xinjiao the Great Emperor. The sight caused the hearts of many to tremble violently, and they could hear their own hearts thumping. Even though they were major figureheads, they felt an indescribable dread at the moment. Looking at the body of the Xinjia the Great Emperor, they seemed to perceive the resurrection of a god. What's more terrifying was that when immeasurable divine glory enveloped this space, they saw an extremely sacred figure. It was a giant, transformed by the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, and they seemed to be inside his body. Was this the domain of the gods? Who was the teacher? And why could he control the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor to this degree? The great elder of Demon Cloud saw the body walking towards him, turning into a ray of light, as Xinjia the Great Emperor raised his palm, slamming towards him. He was surrounded by ancient characters as supreme as the heavens, overwhelming the world they were in. The great elder of Demon Cloud felt a strong sense of threat. He roared, and suddenly, a terrifying demon god appeared. This demon god had a black golden divine light shining all over him, looking invincible. Loud booming sounds came out as the great palm print turned into the sky above, slammed down for the kill. The demon god's palms reached toward the sky, wanting to lift it up. But when that palm print of the god fell, it intended to crush everything. The demon god roared and screamed, but his body was bent under the weight of that palm nonetheless. Boom! With that noise, the demon god's knees crumbled as terrifying rumbling sounds were heard. His body was continuously bursting. The great elder of the Demon Cloud was pale as blood came out of his mouth. He pleaded, "Teacher, please have mercy." With a loud boom, the palm print slammed down, knocking the great elder of the Demon Cloud into the far distance. Every one of the major figureheads that were around panicked. They were the highest existence in Shangqing domain, standing at the peak of cultivation. There were not many who could compare to them in the entire divine prefecture. However, at this moment, in front of the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, they seemed to be facing a giant god, a true god that was utterly unshakable. The body of Xinjia the Great Emperor looked to the other side, and his eyes pierced directly into the eyes of the clan leader of the Nanhai family. He said, "For making a move against the youngsters of Four Corner Village, this palm strike is for you." When his voice fell, the eyes of Xinjia the Great Emperor closed as infinite characters rushed into his consciousness. It was just like he was before when he watched the sacred remains. Numerous palm prints appeared, covering the sky and obscuring the sun, like the giant handprint of the god. The head of the Nanhai family roared in anger, and his palms slapped forward. However, the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor rushed forward as infinite ancient characters turned into countless divine lights. With a loud bang, the giant handprint with terrifying attack power was pulverized into nothing. The body of Xinjia the Great Emperor penetrated it, completely ignoring that terrible attack. Everyone around realized that the divine light inside Xinjia the Great Emperor could destroy all ways. This corpse was the corpse of the gods, therefore transcended the scope of ordinary corpses. The sacred remains contained the power of Xinjia the Great Emperor when he was alive. They were capable of breaking the Great Path. Once this corpse was controlled, it would be as if the power of the resurrection of gods was in hand. How terrifying would that power be? No one could stop it. The divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor unleashed a punch strong enough to smash everything. The blast landed on the body of the clan leader of the Nanhai family, piercing his physical body. The terrifying force now rushed inside his body, as the clan leader couldn't stop the blood coming out of his mouth. He was expelled directly out of this spatial world, which was completely shattered. Cultivators from the outside could see into the void again. They saw the great elder of the Demon Cloud madly vomiting blood. The aura of the clan leader of the Nanhai family was greatly weakened. His body was punched through, and he was wounded by the Great Path. The rest of the cultivators stood in different positions, and all of them trembled. Even though they were major figures, they stood there with dread and anxiety. They had never faced such a situation before, and never even thought that there would be an existence so great that it could make them so desperate. Do any of you have any more comments? Xinjia the Great Emperor uttered again, and everyone was silent. In the cultivation world, strength would always reign first. Xinjia the Great Emperor could destroy all of them right here, right now. What more opinion could they possibly have? Zhou Muhuang trembled inside when he saw everything that had happened, and he was greatly unsettled by what he saw. No one would have thought that the teacher could control the corpse of the Xinjia the Great Emperor and explode with such power. Today, the siege laid upon Four Corner Village by all these cultivators was destined to be in vain. The teacher's cultivation is superb. If you claim the sacred remains, then let it stay here. The domain chief's manor will report to the imperial palace, and I will bid my goodbye presently, said Zhou Muhuang as he put his hands together. What else could he do? The rest of the major players turned to leave with great disturbance in their hearts. This incident had shown them just how fearsome Four Corner Village was now. It seemed that the rise of Four Corner Village was a foregone conclusion, as there was nobody who could stop its ascendance. The cruel strike that the teacher meted out to the clan leader of the Nanhai family just now must have meant as a lesson. Among the crowd, probably only Muyin Lan had the most conflicted feelings. When he was young, he was a student taught by the teacher, seeking the way under his tutelage. This time he came as the enemy of the Four Corner Village. When he thought about the times he spent here as a youth, he was filled with emotion. Even though he knew the teacher was strong, he never expected that it was to this scope. Teacher, Muyin Lan called out. You have chosen your own path. Follow it. An ethereal voice replied, and Muyin Lan was slightly stunned. He then bowed slightly in reverence and turned to walk away. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. It didn't take long for the top-notch cultivators from all over the Shangqing domain to leave, with only those of the ancient royal family of Duan remaining behind. It didn't take long for the top-notch cultivators from all over the Shangqing domain to leave, with only those of the ancient royal family of Duan remaining behind. They were all feeling intense shock deep down, thinking that it had been fortunate for them not to have to continue becoming enemies of the Four Corner Village, instead making friends with them. While the master from the village didn't concern himself with affairs outside, who knew what would have happened if something were to happen to the Four Corner Village? At present, Duan Tianxiong felt that the master from the village was more than what met the eye. That was the sacred remains of great Emperor Xinjia. And he wondered just how that master managed to control it so perfectly. The master was practically invincible for being able to manipulate the powers of that sacred remains. That would be like truly gaining a godlike weapon in one's hands. Some forces of extremely ancient lineages in the divine prefecture were said to have such treasures in their possession. Despite that, it was still not certain that they would be able to resist the master of Four Corner Village when he controlled the body of great Emperor Xinjia. The power was so terrifying that despite having only been a bystander back then, Duan Tianxiong was still shocked to the core. Someone as powerful as the leader of the Nanhai clan hadn't been able to endure a single hit, having his body penetrated, and was forced to retreat. Everyone from the Shangqing domain was forced to re-evaluate the powers of Four Corner Village anew at the moment. The cultivators of Four Corner City saw everything that transpired and were all in awe, hoping even more intensely that they would be able to train in the village. However, only those from the village knew that while the master was indeed powerful, yet the master himself had said that he had been put under some kind of limitation, preventing him from leaving the village. That time might have been a coincidence, where Yi Futian brought the sacred remains of great Emperor Xinjia into the village, which the master could use to put the rest in place. Yi Futian breathed a sigh of relief. He had been prepared to be taken away, and he didn't expect the master to act at such moments. Furthermore, the master had actually been able to achieve perfect manipulation of the sacred remains. That battle alone cemented his renown of being invincible. After that battle, no other cultivation forces of the upper nine heavens, the domain chief's manor included, would definitely dare to do anything against those from the village so easily or thoughtlessly. That meant that it would be a lot safer for villagers to venture outside from then on out. The people throughout the Shangqing domain had to elevate the status of the cultivators of the village to that of those from the domain chief's manor. I never expect that I would be able to witness such a magnificent battle today. There could hardly be anyone capable of matching the powers of the master, Duan Tianxiong commented, and he spoke very highly of the master. That battle was more than enough to be known as the most intense one throughout the domain. Titans of the upper 9 heavens, all over the Shangqing domain, attacked Four Corner Village, and they were all repelled by the master alone. Despite the fact that he had only fought by making use of the sacred remains of great Emperor Xinjia, the battle was unlike any other. Furthermore, the master was truly someone out of the world. Yi Futian had previously brought the sacred remains in order to return it. It was also obvious that the master who had controlled the sacred remains didn't desire the sacred remains, as he wouldn't have let Yi Futian bring that body out otherwise. It was only until when people were about to attack Yi Futian and take him away that the master made his move, telling them to back off and leave the sacred remains behind as well. The master made good on his word, as he managed to keep Yi Futian and the sacred remains behind. The cultivators of the village said nothing. Old Ma then said to Duan Tianxiong, "How about we head inside the village for a bit? That wouldn't be necessary for me. However, Duan Xiong and the young ones have always wanted to take a look at the village. How about letting them stay behind and take a tour around the place then?" Duan Tianxiong smiled as he said to Old Ma, who then nodded. "Very well. In that case, I shall take my leave. None would dare to do anything to the village after what happened here. Right now, we shall just wait for news from the Imperial Palace," Duan Tianxiong added. Old Ma and the others nodded. Yi Futian was feeling rather restless after hearing that. With the dust settled then, he too hoped that news from the Imperial Palace would come sooner rather than later. He was feeling very anxious to return to his native realm and check things out back there. Duan Tianxiong took his leave, and everyone returned to the village. The sacred remains were controlled by the master and headed to the private school. Yi Futian was summoned by the master as soon as he returned, and he went to the school as well. The sacred remains lay at the side without making moving. It seemed as if he was completely under the master's control. "Thank you, master." Yi Futian bowed to the master. The way he saw it, the master seemed to have become even more mysterious, and he was unable to see through the master at all. According to the villagers, the master had been around for a very, very long time. Yet no one actually knew how long. It was possible that the master was as old as the village itself. Furthermore, the master had a mystical air about him. He made himself feel so surreal to the others that it seemed like he didn't belong to the mortal world. Given that the sacred remains came with you, it became apparent that your destinies were intertwined, and there was indeed no need for you to return it. Now that the cultivators of the Shangqing domain are so brutal with their approach, then we have no need to play nice with them. Just come here if you want to learn from the sacred remains from here on out. If anything were to happen, it'd be easy to nip it in the bud in time as well." The master then said to Yi Futian. "Very well." Yi Futian bowed. "There is something I'd like to ask, master." "Please," the master replied. "What actually happened when the heavenly path collapsed back in ancient times? Is the very extreme of cultivation breaking the heavenly path? Why would someone with your kind of power stay in the village all the time?" Yi Futian asked. "Matters with the world of cultivators are not as simple as you thought they would be. Cultivators sought the highest level achievable, and there was a war between gods taking place in ancient times. As for the limitations on me now, know that even in the present day, what you see may not actually be true, let alone what happened in ancient times. You'll be able to get to know such things when you've reached a certain height," the master said to Yi Futian. Yi Futian was feeling rather unsettled, wondering what the truth behind the collapse of the heavenly path was, and what was going on with the world of cultivators currently. He wondered if what he was seeing was indeed not the truth. There is no need to overthink it. The answers would be laid before you once you've reached the required level. By then, you wouldn't be able to turn a blind eye to it even if you want to, the master continued. Yi Futian nodded and bowed once again. "Thank you, master." He left the private school, and several people went up to him as soon as he emerged. They were none other than Feng Siyuan, Little Ling, Tai Tu and Duo Yu. The four of them had grown quite a bit, and the way they saw it, things changed every day. After knowing just how surreally powerful the master was, he came to understand why the youngsters from the village were all so powerful, being born with an aptitude for the great path, destined to a cut above the others. All of them had incredibly frightening potential. The achievement of the four of them would probably eclipse that of Feng Gai, Old Man, Blind Tai, and the others. All of them would grow up to be extremely renowned figures. How has your training been going recently? He patted their heads and asked. Teacher, I've been watching them the whole time. They are doing fine. And the master has been teaching us as well. Feng Xiyuan smiled and replied. The boy was considerably more respectful to Yi Futian than how he used to be. And that respect was genuine. And the boy was indeed less naughty than how he used to be. That probably has to do with him having grown considerably. Sure. Don't slack off in your training. Yi Futian smiled as he spoke to them. After hearing what the master told him, it would seem that the world was more complicated than what he had imagined. Furthermore, with forces like the Dark Court being on the move, they may have to fight a war at a scale huge enough to engulf the entire divine prefecture. The War of the Origin Realm might probably be only a trigger. There was no telling what would happen in the future, but it was extremely probable that the entire world would see massive changes. Everyone needed to be prepared, and if some massive change did happen, everyone needed to grow faster in order to take on what was to come in the future. The battle in Four Corner Village rocked the entire Shangqing domain. All the forces involved returned, and everything was unusually silent. No one brought up the sacred remains again, yet the cultivators of the Shangqing domain all knew that after the battle, there was an invincible being in the upper 9 heavens of the Shangqing domain that no one could afford to mess with. It was said that the leader of the Nanhai clan went into isolation to recuperate from his injuries as soon as he returned. The Four Corner continent had gotten even rowdier as more cultivators began to move in. At present, be it the powers at the very top, the number of very formidable ones, or those of later generations, the village was at the very peak of the Shangqing domain standards. No one knew just how powerful the village would become in the future, and it was extremely possible that they would be the force that would reign supreme over the entire Shangqing domain. When the day came, Four Corner Continent would naturally be incredibly prosperous, and there was no way one would miss out on an opportunity like that. However, none of that seemed to have anything to do with Yi Futian. Yi Futian sat cross-legged under the ancient tree in the village. Xia Qingyuan was not far away, and the bird flew around lazily. The four little ones solemnly surrounded Yi Futian. The scene looked like some surreal drawing, looking very peaceful, serene, and beautiful. His eyes were closed as he sat under the tree. The leaves and branches swayed as it shrouded him. Rumbles continued to be heard from within his body as he continued to clad in divine light. Time passed, and the lot of them were completely steeped in their own training, shutting out the outside world entirely, elevating their powers quietly to stabilize their levels, and casting aside everything in the outside world. The way he saw it, only cultivation would prepare him for his return to Origin Realm. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Time passed. Four Corner City was bustling and prosperous, while Four Corner Village remained serene and peaceful. Time passed. Four Corner City was bustling and prosperous, while Four Corner Village remained serene and peaceful. Yi Futian sat cross-legged under an ancient tree in that holy land in the Four Corner continent. His body flowed with the divine shimmer of the Great Path. Different kinds of Great Path powers emanated from his body, making him look like a manifestation of the Great Path itself. A terrifying aura emanated from his body. A terrifying scene took place with him at the center. It was as if the space he occupied became its own independent space. His face was vaguely seen in that space, and a specter, like an ancient god, appeared there. He levitated and melded with that world, like he had become an ancient god. The space kept expanding, shrouding the skies. The phenomenon in that space became increasingly terrifying. Everyone saw many things appearing above that ancient godlike body of his. The sun shone on everything below. There was a cold, icy world under the cold moon, a peacock spreading its divine wings, a rock tearing through the skies, a divine ape howling at the sky, a divine elephant standing tall. All these phenomena melded into a beautiful picture that was extremely stunning. In that picture, that tall, mighty being standing over everything was filled with raging power. It looked like the true God that reigned over everything. That scene had shaken the entire four-corner village. The beautiful picture dazzled with glittering divine light. Many who looked at Yi Futian from afar felt as if the terrifying power of the great path was seeping into them right away. Those who were of weaker training dared not even get close. Old Ma, Blind Tai, and some others flew to where he was, standing from afar as they watched him train. The splendid phenomena shocked them to the core, and their eyes reflected the dazzle of that splendid scene. He had been steeped in training the whole time, and would head to the private school to experience the power of the sacred remains, as well as to seek the master's teachings. Everyone was able to sense that he was making progress every day. That progress was more than just in terms of his level. It was also his progress in the understanding of cultivation. All of that finally culminated in a drastic change, and he became very, very different. At that moment he opened his eyes, and terrifying divine light shot from them. It was as if those eyes were the sum of his being. The mystical phenomena around him disappeared in an instant, returning into his body. He came to stand alone in midair again. However, everyone was able to sense that that body of his had become completely different from how it had been before. It was as if he had just experienced a total change from the inside out. "So you finally got it?" Old Ma walked up to Yi Futian and asked. He knew what had happened to the young man. "Yeah, I finally got it." Yi Futian smiled and nodded. "How do you feel?" Old Ma then asked. Yi Futian grinned and lifted his arm. The rumbling of the great path was heard from his arm right away. It was filled with terrifying power. He took one step forward, and rumbling was heard all over the place. It was as if the earth itself was shaking. What just happened caught all of their attention. Eyes were all locked onto Yi Futian, thinking just how terrifying such a presence was. They all wondered just how terrifying such powers were. Given that Yi Futian was able to cause such a rumble by just lifting his arm and walk. Chen Yi went up and stared at Yi Futian intensely. Some people were born with the great path in them, and such people were known to have great path physiques. Those of supreme talents were known to have what is known to be divine bodies of the great path. Right now, I wonder what that body of yours shall be called. Divine body of the heavenly path, perhaps. Yi Futian grinned and replied. It sounded like he was joking. That was what he claimed his body to be when he was facing Zhang Yuan of the Violet Heavenly Palace in the 9 Supreme Imperial Realms back in the Void Realm. Zhang Yuan claimed to be of the supreme body of the Great Path, so he called his body the Divine Body of the Heavenly Path instead. A nice name. Chen Yi nodded instead. Only the name Divine Body of the Heavenly Path is fitting of that physique of yours right now. Everybody from the outside may feel like an imposter when compared to you. They will probably have to doubt the authenticity of their great path physiques if they run into you. Yi Futian grinned as he shook his head. He had just come up with something random from the depths of his mind. Claiming to have the divine body of the heavenly path indeed sounded rather pompous. The name will do. Old Ma nodded and continued surprisingly. Let's just call it the divine body of the heavenly path, then. I guess if you are to be able to finish molding that physique of yours, you would be able to pass it down to your descendants. If one's cultivation gets to such a level, one's talents may indeed be passed down. After forging such a formidable physique, there is definitely a chance for him to pass it down to his descendants. But then again, he didn't seem to have any thoughts of having children. Yi Futian was speechless upon hearing what they just said. He had only been joking, and they all actually took it at face value, thinking that the name of Divine Body of the Heavenly Path was a fitting name. Well, there goes any attempt of keeping a low profile then. How powerful is this body of yours right now? Chen Yi asked, feeling rather curious. Now that you're the same level as me, I could stand here and let you attack me to the best of your ability. You probably still wouldn't be able to kill me. Yi Futian chuckled as he answered. Chen Yi took a look at the Yi Futian, thinking that the other man was being somewhat pompous indeed. Well, although you've attained the divine body of the heavenly path, I'm still of the divine body of light. Are you sure about that? Chen Yi looked at Yi Futian, feeling somewhat irked. He really wanted to try his hand then. Divine body of light, Yi Futian was feeling rather intimidated. The name did sound rather frightening after all. Don't forget that among the 9 divine techniques among the 4 corner villages' heritage, there is the ancient divine immortal form, and I've incorporated it into my body. Yi Futian smiled as he continued speaking. His current body was indeed something that someone on the same level as him would find very, very hard to kill. But then again, he meant those who had reached perfection at level 6 of the Great Path. As for those at level 6 and had yet to reach perfection, he could literally stand and let them hit him with all they had. They were no longer in the same league as him, so he wouldn't bother comparing himself with them. Alright, you win. Chun-Yi rolled his eyes and thought that he had to be more hardworking when it came to his training. Otherwise, the other man would eventually come to look down on him. Yi Futian didn't continue bragging. He simply took a look at old Ma and asked, "Is there any news from the outside?" Despite having trained in isolation the whole time, he was also waiting for news from the Imperial Palace. When can we depart to the Origin Realm? The Imperial Palace is too far away, and we have no way of getting any word from the Void Realm. Even the ones at the Domain Chief's Manor probably won't know a lot about things at the moment. The Void Realm and the Divine Prefecture were separated after all. We can only continue to wait for news from the Domain Chief's Manor, Old Ma answered. Yi Futian nodded, feeling rather disappointed. He was hoping to get news as soon as possible after all. I'll go and check things out with the master, Yi Futian said, and everyone else nodded. He then made his way to the private school. He took a look at the sacred remains of great Emperor Xinjia when he got to the master's place. He had not been wasting any of his efforts learning from the sacred remains. In actual fact, his ability to create his own great path physique was something he learned from great Emperor Xinjia's sacred remains. Master! Yi Futian turned around and called out to the mystical figure. The master nodded and said, "The change that you've undergone this time boosted your powers considerably. It was all thanks to your teachings," Yi Futian replied. "Actually, it's all because of your own training. I've only given you a pointer or two. You'd have been able to get this far with, or without me around." The master then continued, "You should be able to take on great powers from here on out, and you can increase the frequency of resonating with the sacred remains here. Continue to hone your body to bring it closer toward perfection." "Right, I understand." Yi Futian nodded. "Get back to your training then." The master didn't say any else. He turned around and left. Yi Futian went up to the sacred remains and continued to train with his eyes closed. He would be completely steeped in his training, for the time being, casting everything outside aside. Year 10062 of the Divine Prefecture calendar. Someone from the Domain Chief's Manor of the Shangqing Domain came to Four Corner Village. Yi Futian stopped training right away after knowing that someone from the Domain Chief's Manor came. He went to where the emissary was, where Old Ma and the others were. "I've come on the chief's orders to inform Four Corner Village that the Imperial Palace is calling cultivators throughout the 18 domains to arms, heading to the Origin Realm. Should anyone be willing to go, please head for the Imperial Domain. If any cultivator from Four Corner Village is willing to head there, they could head to the Domain Chief's Manor with me, and we shall embark together afterward," the emissary said. Yi Futian was feeling restless. The day has finally come. He had been waiting for the news the whole time. Waiting for the Imperial Palace to call the formidable ones throughout the 18 domains to arms. It seemed that the conflict over at the Void Realm had gotten extremely intense, exceeding his imagination. Back then, the forces involved had already decided the ownership of the Void Realm through a battle, and he wondered if those from the Dark Court and the empty Divine Realm broke the treaty again. It hadn't been that many years, right? Just what has happened back in the Origin Realm indeed. The news from the Imperial Palace is not a forced conscription, and the Domain Chief was not making any demands. "Anybody willing to head over, please come with me," the emissary continued. Old Ma nodded and replied, "Thank you, sir. Let's head out then." He knew that Yi Futian had been waiting for that day to come, and they had long determined who among them would be heading over. With the news already delivered, it was naturally time to make their departure, and there was little preparation needed. "Very well, let's go." The emissary nodded, and the group headed outside the village. Yi Futian was feeling extremely restless at that moment. After all, he had been training for quite a long time. He was still worried about the origin realm. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Domain Chief's Manor, Shangqing Domain. Domain Chief's Manor, Shangqing Domain. Formidable ones kept showing up from all corners, and Yi Futian's gang was actually the slowest to show up. All the other forces were at the upper 9 heavens, with only those from the four-corner continent being elsewhere. Furthermore, they didn't head to the ancient royal family of Duan via the teleportation grand matrix. Instead, they had come with the emissary. As such, everyone was already there when Yi Futian and his people showed up at the Domain Chief's manor. In the manor, everyone present turned their eyes at Yi Futian and the group of cultivators from Four Corner Village. What happened outside the village last year stuck in their minds. It seemed like it had happened the day before. The impression was so intense that they came to see those from the village in a different light. Prior to that, despite the fact that those of the Four Corner Village had finally opened themselves up to the world, and that the other cultivation forces saw great potential in the village, the villagers were nonetheless new to the world at large. Therefore, they were lacking in a lot of ways and had a lot to learn. However, that battle with the master back then cemented their reputation as being invincible. This was so much so that even those from the Domain Chief's manor were forced to re-evaluate those from the village. The matter of the sacred remains of great Emperor Xinjia eventually blew over, and this was due to the effect of that one battle. The way things worked in the world of cultivation was still decided by one's actual powers. They dared to attack the village before because they thought that the village couldn't possibly take on the combined might of the entire Shangqing domain. However, no one else dared to bring up the matter with the sacred remains, since the master intimidated all of them with his show of power. The sacred remains were taken away, and there was nothing they could do about it. The gaze from the formidable ones lingered most on Yi Futian, as it had been he who took the sacred remains away back then, and had made a breakthrough by learning from them. His bearing felt rather different, and he was apparently stronger than how he had been back then. The lineup from Four Corner Village was indeed powerful. Old Ma was there. Several high-level Renhuang, who were at perfect level 8, were around, and Yi Futian's gang was there as well. With the master taking charge of matters in the village, they had nothing to worry about. Anybody who dared to act against the village would need to really think things through. At that moment, a group of people showed up. The domain chief, Zhou Muhuang, Zhou Lingxi, and the others were there. The chief didn't bring up the matter with the sacred remains of great Emperor Xinjia. It was as if they really had put the matter to rest. It seemed like nothing had ever happened in the first place. Zhou Lingxi had only turned to look at Yi Futian, and flashed a faint smile. "You're here, Sir Yi." Yi Futian came to rather dislike the domain chief's manner by then. When the domain chief's manor tried their best to get him to train in the domain chief's manor back then, he began to question what they were up to. Everything that happened since then made him feel that those from the domain chief's manor had too strong of an agenda. This was especially true, given what Zhou Muhuang proposed back then. This could be seen both as an opportunity as well as a threat, and turning it down could spell trouble for him. In actual fact, if those of the domain chief's manor had emerged to mediate things, with him handing over the sacred remains, and those from the domain chief's manor calling it even, what had followed afterward probably wouldn't have happened. The domain chief's manor still had enough authority and influence to be capable of that much. Yet Zhou Muhuang said nothing after Yi Futian rejected his proposal. Yi Futian didn't begrudge those of the domain chief's manor for not helping him out, as neither of them owed one another any favors to begin with. However, at the very least, what transpired had driven a permanent wedge in their relationship, and they could never be friends. But then again, Yi Futian didn't rudely ignore Zhou Lingxi when she greeted him. He simply nodded and smiled in reply. The chief stood at the very front and scanned all of the formidable ones who showed up. The very best to be found throughout the Shangqing domain had all gathered there. It was a given that several titans had not shown up. Also, some forces, who had 2 cultivators deemed to be titans, had only fielded one to lead their teams. They were interested in checking things out at the Void Realm as well. They had only heard some rumors regarding the Void Realm so far. After all, the reason why I've gathered you all here is that we have received word from the Imperial Palace. I've mentioned a thing or two about what happened in the Void Realm before. In actual fact, some changes took place in the Void Realm many years ago. The Dark Court had opened a passage leading to the Void Realm, and the Imperial Palace reacted to it according. This led to some of the forces of the Divine Prefecture heading over there. The chief continued as he addressed the crowd. However, the Imperial Palace didn't give any orders back then, and the commotion was manageable. Those who headed to the Void Realm back then had something to do with the Void Realm to begin with. However, things are somewhat different now. The Imperial Palace hopes to have cultivators from the 18 domains to check things out at the Void Realm. And I've received some news myself that there were some great changes within the Void Realm. This is not an official conscription from the Imperial Palace, and no one will be forced against their will to join. The Imperial Palace might simply want all of you to go over there and have a look at things. Everyone listened quietly. All of them received news more or less, but such news was scarce, and they still had no idea how things actually were over at the Void Realm. This time, Mu Huang will lead our forces from the Domain Chief's manor. Please take care of each other when you get there. That place is truly in a chaotic state right now. All top-notch forces from the 18 domains will see their people there, and forces not of the Divine Prefecture may be heading there as well. I hope that we of the Shangqing domain can be more united when we're out there, the chief said to the crowd. Everybody nodded in response. Given their levels and status, they didn't need the chief to tell them more about what they were supposed to do. Enough from me now. We'll talk more on our way there. Let's depart. We can first use the Great Teleportation Matrix to get to the Imperial Realm before heading towards the Imperial Palace, the chief said as he took the lead. The Divine Prefecture was ruled by Donghuang the Great, with the Imperial Palace serving as its center. All the other 17 domains spread out from there. There were countless continents found throughout the Divine Prefecture. Under such circumstances, the Imperial Palace, naturally, needed teleportation matrices to keep an eye on what was happening throughout the 18 domains. As such, all domains had similar matrices that led straight to the Imperial domain. If something were to happen, they could save time and deal with the issues as quickly as possible. The teleportation matrix, over at the Shangqing domain, was constructed inside of the domain chief's manor itself. It was a terrifyingly huge supersized great teleportation matrix. The entire manor lit up with dazzling divine light as soon as the matrix was activated. The beams of divine light shot to the air, and a teleportation portal leading to the stars appeared in the sky. At that moment, countless cultivators, both inside or outside the manor, looked over to the sky at that place. The entire sky lit up as they all gazed, conjuring terrifying divine brilliance, and an ancient, sacred passage materialized. Let's go, Mu Huang, the chief said to Zhou Mu Huang, who was the one to lead all the formidable ones in that expedition. Very well. Zhou Mu Huang nodded and took the first step, entering that supersized matrix. Their bodies were all shrouded by extremely dazzling divine light. They shot to the sky right away, entering that terrifying space passage. Shortly after, they disappeared. One figure after another behind Zhou Mu Huang disappeared. All cultivators from the city looked in the direction of the domain chief's manor when the matrix was activated. They looked at the figures up in the sky disappear as they stepped into the passage hanging in midair. The Imperial Domain was the highest point of the heavens and the absolute center of the Divine Prefecture. The Imperial Domain was different from the other domain. When they all emerged from the portal, none of them appeared on land. They were all hovering midair instead. Dazzling beams shrouded them, and the light was utterly blinding. Yi Futian looked around him and was quickly stunned by what was right before his eyes. He saw the spaces beneath him had countless continents far away. Due to the continents being very far from each other, all of them looked like islands suspended in midair. Yet they were very neatly aligned as they hovered in between heaven and earth. It seemed as if all of them were the same in terms of altitude. Every single continent among the countless continents shot dazzling divine beams from them diagonally, all of which headed for the highest point in the heavens. The beams coalesced into stairways leading to the heavens, and all of them, due to being arranged in steps, looked like literal stairways. Futian and all the others appeared in that area. They looked up at the sky above them. At the highest point of the heavens, where the divine light from the many continents shot at, lay a city hovering in the air. That city dazzled with terrifying divine light. It looked as if it was where the gods lived. Divine light from that city shot downwards and connected the countless continents beneath right away, as if uniting them. That scene was very, very shocking to any cultivator who came. So much so that even someone like Futian was stunned by the dazzling landscape he just saw. He was able to guess what was at that highest point of the heavens. That was the center of the imperial domain, where the imperial palace was found. That was the place where Donghuang the Great took up residence, the imperial city. Futian was feeling completely rocked deep down. Despite wanting nothing more than to return to Origin Realm at the moment, it was still challenging for his mind to stay calm after his arrival. He had finally arrived at the absolute center of the divine prefecture, the imperial city. All the answers he sought would be found in that very city. The city was located at the highest point of the heavens. Be it his origins, information regarding Emperor Yi Qing, his godfather, and whatever else, everything he needed to know would be here. He might be able to find all the answers to all of those questions there. Having trained for so long, he had almost reached higher Runhuang levels, and finally came into contact with the imperial city, which was the very core of the world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Zhou Muhuang looked up at where the imperial palace was and said, "Let's get up." Zhou Muhuang looked up at where the imperial palace was and said, "Let's get up." Everyone continued moving upward after he said that. Moving along that stairway conjured from divine light. It was like they were moving up to a real heavenly court. They stood high up in the sky, which didn't look all that far away. However, that was only because they were standing under divine light, and the space had nothing else for reference, which made them feel like common people looking up at the stars in the sky. That was the imperial palace reigning throughout the entire divine prefecture, the very top of the heavens. They finally saw someone after some time. A door appeared before them, leading to the gates of the imperial city, where formidable guards stood over the gates. That imperial city was something that one could not step in from outside, as it was shrouded in terrifying divine might. Entrance into the city required passing the heavenly gates. I'm Zhou Muhuang of the Domain Chief's Manor of the Shangqing Domain, hereby leading the cultivators of the Shangqing Domain to the imperial city. I hope that we would be granted passage. Zhou Muhuang went up and said to the guard, who then seemed to be communicating with the ones in charge inside. He nodded and said, "Please." The guards made way right after that. All of them then went inside the gates right away. The terrifying power of space emanated from inside. Futian and the others felt like they were inside another space after getting in there. The place was surrounded by divine light, and mystical qi filled the place. The imperial city was not a single entity. There were many hovering cultivation temples everywhere, all of which were inhabited by very powerful cultivators. Anyone permitted to train and stay inside the imperial city would be someone with esteemed status or descendants of ancient formidable ones. The imperial city was the most mysterious place in all of the divine prefecture. No one knew just how many formidable beings there were in there, and even the cultivators throughout the 18 domains had only heard rumors about it. Some speculated that among the countless cultivation temples in the imperial city, some ancient cultivators were found inside. Everyone went on to look all over the place after getting there. Towering divine glows fell like waterfalls in there, making it seem like there was an extremely magnificent hall of the gods within. That was the highest point of the heavens. It was the very peak of the 9 heavens. That was the imperial palace. That was the place where Donghuang the Great lived. This was the most powerful of places throughout the entire divine prefecture. Futian wondered what kind of people would be able to live inside that imperial city, and see the imperial palace all the time. There were definitely many top-notch cultivation forces in the many continents in the imperial domain, and he wondered about the imperial city inside the Heaven's Gate. I think that the core forces of Donghuang the Great are in here, including the divine generals, the leaders of the legions, and people of that sort, he thought. Yi Futian was feeling rather restless, wondering what kind of relationship he shared with the imperial palace. Zhou Muhuang then brought the formidable ones toward the imperial palace. Once they got near the imperial palace, they discovered just how magnificent and vast the place actually was. The imperial palace had its own strata, and they were stopped right outside the place. Some formidable ones came to receive them, and Yi Futian actually knew the man. It was none other than the palace lord of empty imperial palace, the emissary who the imperial palace sent to oversee the void realm. The emissary seemed to have seen Yi Futian, and his eyes lingered on him for a brief moment. He smiled and then looked at the crowd before saying to Zhou Muhuang, "Thank you all for coming. It is an honor for us to serve the imperial palace, and we would certainly give it our all." All top-notch forces throughout the Shangqing domain sent their people to the origin realm, Zhou Muhuang replied. "Allow me to lead the way," the palace lord of the empty imperial palace said as he did so. Divine might lay upon everyone, and even someone as powerful as Yi Futian felt that pressure on him. It felt rather solemn. No one said anything during the journey, and everyone followed the palace lord of the empty imperial palace in silence. There was more than one way leading to void realm other than the imperial palace. Yet, given that it was the imperial palace that called the formidable ones to arms, it was only natural for them to head over there, through the imperial palace. Those of the Shangqing domain were not the ones doing so, as those from the rest of the 18 domains were doing the same as well. Many formidable ones had made it to the origin realm. The palace lord led them on a detour around the external fringes of the imperial palace, instead of heading inside the palace itself. He even slowed down and deliberately came near Yi Futian, saying, "It has been years since we last met, and it would seem that your powers have seen considerable growth, Emperor Yi. It looks like what happened all those years ago was a blessing in disguise. You've now become someone capable of reigning supreme somewhere in the divine prefecture." The battle back in the void realm, all those years ago, saw Yi Futian at an undisputed disadvantage. Everyone thought that he was dead, and the palace lord certainly didn't expect to see him reappear. It was all like a dream. He wondered just how Yi Futian managed to leave alive and come to the divine prefecture. He was oblivious to the fact that Princess Donghuang helped Yi Futian in secret. And except for the two of them, there were probably only a few others who knew about it. Being only a subordinate of hers, Princess Donghuang naturally did not need to tell the palace lord any of it. "You flatter me, sir. I was just lucky back then." Yi Futian then asked, "Have you been in the origin realm this whole time? How are things over there now?" The palace lord of the imperial palace then smiled and said, "I'm afraid you'll need to be psychologically prepared, Emperor Yi. Things in the origin realm are completely different from how they once were. The changes are so significant that the place might as well be somewhere else altogether. You'll be able to see for yourself once you return, and there's no need for me to say more." Yi Futian's heart sank, feeling a formless pressure washing all over him, and making him feel restless deep down. What is going on with the origin realm? Obviously, the origin realm had seen extremely huge changes, and was completely different from what it was when he left. As for the specific changes, he would only know when he headed back to find out himself. The key, however, would be if all his friends and family were still around. "I wonder how they are doing," Yi Futian thought. The palace lord brought them to pass by certain areas with guards guarding them, and came to somewhere rather mystical. There was an empty space before them, and there was a terrifying aura sealed within a gate of space. The place was surrounded by starlight, and it felt like a world of stars in itself. There was a deep spatial passage, which enabled them to sense something else from within. "This is the gate of the passage leading to the origin realm. Enter, and you will be able to pass through this space and reach the origin realm. I'll let the rest of you head over on your own," the palace lord then said to the crowd. They were rather surprised that they were told to make the trip on their own, instead of having someone from the imperial palace take the lead. It would seem like things had yet to spiral into an all-out war. They would have been required to move as a single unit otherwise. Thank you, sir. Zhou Muhuang nodded to the palace lord of the empty imperial palace and walked inside before everyone else. All the others then followed him into the passage. Yi Futian walked through the gate and then into the passage. He felt like he was in the middle of nowhere mere moments later. There seemed only to be an endless void sprawled out before him. He saw many stars, and at that moment, he felt like he was seeing familiar faces in those stars. There were Jiyu, Yusheng, Wuchen, and his other brothers and sisters in training. He wondered how they were all doing. Ninu should have all grown up right now, I guess, he thought. I wonder how my teachers and the mistresses are doing as well, he wondered. Xiaomuyu Do Zhao Longchen and the others. How is their training going? How much progress have they made? How far have those supreme geniuses of perfect levels of the Great Path come? Lord Taixian, how is the old man doing now? During the battles in the Origin Realm back all those years ago, he had been attacked by many from a good number of foreign forces like Tianshan Academy, the Golden Divine Nation, the Shun Clan, the Solar Divine Palace, and so on. All of them were out to kill him and get rid of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, which the Lord had protected again and again. There were also formidable ones from the Divine Palace, Emperor Nan of the Nantian Divine Kingdom, Xiao Dingtian of the Xiao Clan, and many other seniors of his. He wondered how all of them were doing during the years after his departure. Is the Heavenly Mandate Academy still around? He wondered. Are the Dragon Gods, the Divine Elephants, and the Sky Demon Court still united after and fighting alongside the Heavenly Mandate Academy? All of those familiar faces flooded his mind. All those memories surged right there, and then before he was even in the realm itself. It was as if he had recalled all that he had been through throughout the years, the crises, all those times when they helped each other, and the battles they fought, their lives hanging by a thread, all at once. His eldest brother, second brother, his teacher Qi Xiangang, and the rest. While it had been many years since they last met, he felt like they were still close all the same. Though he had been training in the Divine Prefecture for many years, to him, the memories he had in the Divine Prefecture would never be as intense and profound as those he forged back in the Origin Realm. That was his home where his family was. Of course, there were also a lot of his enemies back there, like the overbearing Shun Clan, the arrogant Golden Divine Nation, the traitorous Jianao from Tianshan Academy, the antagonizing Solar Divine Palace, and those who hailed from the Divine Prefecture and showed nothing but contempt for everything, like the Holy Land of Taichu and some others. He would also never forget their faces as well. If it hadn't been for Princess Donghuang having mercy in that last battle back in the Void Realm, where he was ganged up on by so many formidable ones, he would have perished for sure. Furthermore, that happened when he fought on the side of Divine Prefecture against the Dark Court and the empty Divine Realm. Yet those forces, which were supposed to fight alongside him, had turned against him and wanted to kill him instead. This was especially true for the Tianshan Academy. He remembered all of that all too well. An intense emotional fluctuation happened as those memories flooded his mind, and everything in front of his eyes changed. He stood in midair and looked at the place before him. A familiar feeling washed all over him. After 20 years, he was finally back. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2187. Changes in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Chapter 2187. Changes in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Yi Futian spread his will out and scanned the vast space he was in. A majestic building appeared in his mind, and he learned where he was right there and then. The most powerful place among the 9 supreme imperial realms was the empty imperial palace of the imperial realm. The location from which he emerged after passing through that passage from the imperial palace was none other than the empty imperial palace. Emperor Yi, you are from the Void Realm. Could you lead the way for us? Zhou Muhuang then asked Yi Futian. The Void Realm isn't that huge to you all, unlike the Divine Prefecture where there are countless continents. This place only has 3,000 realms, And the strongest is the 9 supreme imperial realms. This is the imperial realm, and I believe that it wouldn't take you much time to get to know the 9 supreme imperial realms. Yi Futian then added, "It has been quite some years since I was last here, and I need to see my friends and family. I shall take my leave here." He then walked away from that place right afterward. It was indeed as he put it. He had been gone for 20 years, and he missed his home, which meant that he had no time to serve as a guide for Zhou Muhuang and the others. Yi Futian at the moment wanted nothing but to go home to his people. "We too shall take our leave." Duan Tianxiong of the Duan clan cupped his hands and said, leaving with Yi Futian and those from the four-corner village. He paid no heed to what the others might think of them. The way he saw it, Yi Futian had the strongest potential among all in the Shangqing domain, and he had the master to serve as his backing. As such, he had nothing to lose by being friends with someone like that. Zhou Muhuang watched as those people went away. He took the initiative to talk to Yi Futian to ease the tension between the two of them. He knew without a doubt that what happened before had driven a wedge into their relationship, and Yi Futian became very, very guarded. However, Yi Futian seemed not to bother to give him any face, refusing his request and leaving right away. Yi Futian traveled at very high speeds in the air. He was very anxious and wanted to check things out at the Heavenly Mandate realm as soon as possible. Old Ma and the others seemed to be able to sense his worries, and they followed him quietly, heading for Heavenly Mandate realm. The Heavenly Mandate Academy back at the Heavenly Mandate realm had once been a renowned academy before Yi Futian left. It had forged the strongest alliance among the 3,000 realms with the Yuanyang clan, the Dou tribe, the Xiao clan, the Divine Palace, and some other forces. Countless cultivators had come to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to train. However, it was precisely due to the prestige of the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the threat that Yi Futian posed, the Sheng clan, the Golden Divine Nation, and some other forces allied with the ones from Divine Prefecture, forging an alliance that was even more terrifying. The opposing forces had waged 2 battles against them, with the first one to destroy the Divine Palace. That battle at the Sea of the Path shook over half of the forces throughout the 9 realms. There was then the battle at Heavenly Mandate Academy to kill Yi Futian, who fled to the Divine Prefecture after that battle and lost all connection with the Void Realm. 20 years passed since then, and the Heavenly Mandate Academy was no longer as esteemed as it had once been. Instead, the place looked rather dilapidated, with a good number of places among those majestic buildings now broken. Scars of the great path powers remained. An old man lay on a bench in one of the compounds inside the academy to rest. The old man had silver hair and coughed every now and then. His aura appeared rather weak, and given his cultivation level, it would have been impossible for him to look that weak. He had apparently been severely injured. "Grandpa Xian, you're slacking off again." A voice was heard, and a girl was seen walking up to him. The girl was beautiful and sported features that men would kill for. She looked like some kind of goddess. She came to the old man's back and massaged him. The old man flashed a beaming smile right away, and an amicable look appeared in those tired eyes of his. It was apparent that he doted on that girl very much. "I wasn't slacking off," the old man said in a rather lazy tone. "You're basking in the sun instead of healing your injuries, and that's slacking off," the girl said with a grin on her face. There was a tired look on his face as he added, "Injuries like that don't heal easily, and once you've gotten used to it, it's like they are there the whole time anyway. By the way, I may be old, but I can still take it. I'd be fine." The girl's eyes looked glum upon hearing what that old man said. She was seemingly sad for him. She knew that Grandpa Xian's injuries were actually quite severe, as they would have been all healed given the old man's cultivation level. If the injuries couldn't heal well, it only meant that the great path injuries he sustained were very, very harsh. This was so much so that they might be stuck with him for the rest of his life. "It's good to hear that you can withstand the injuries, but you have to tend to the academy as well." A voice was heard, and 2 other people were seen walking up to them. One of them was pitch black all over, and the aura around him felt somewhat terrifying. It seemingly having something to do with his powers. "Tianhe, I'll leave the academy in your hands," the old man said gently. That man was his old friend, and he naturally wouldn't stand on formality. You're the college chief. This is your job, the Sky River Great Elder said with a low tone. That old man was none other than the college chief of Heavenly Mandate Academy, Lord Taixian. Man! Lord Taixian grinned as he shook his head. He knew that that old friend of his was only paying lip service. If that man were to truly be able to just cast everything aside, he wouldn't have returned. He had avoided the place for many years until he knew what happened there, which prompted him to return. He is right. You're the chief, and this is your responsibility. Don't even think of dumping it on someone else right now. The woman by Sky River Great Elder said. That woman was Shun Luoxua, the Great Elder's wife. There was yet another very pretty girl behind them, and it was Fei Xue. She went up to Lord Taixian and advised him. Grandpa Xian, you should really pay more attention to your health. Lord Taixian wore a bitter grin and shook his head. All right. Geez, I got it. He then smiled and looked up at the sky and said, I wonder if I could still make it in time. What do you mean make it in time? We're around, so what's there to fear? The Sky River Great Elder asked. The world has changed considerably now, and things are not how they used to be. You can see how many terrifying ones are among those from the Divine Prefecture. We're still far from being strong enough. Lord Taixian sighed. The place has changed considerably, and a lot of things won't go back to the way they used to be. We could only do our best to live from here on out. The Sky River Great Elder added. Yeah. Lord Taixian nodded. It's been 20 years, I guess. I wonder how they're doing now. The arm of the girl behind Lord Taixian flinched, and she looked up at the sky. Her thoughts seemed to have traveled back to when she was still little, back when she was still very young and innocent. She missed her sister and brother-in-law. How are they doing now, I wonder? She thought. There were many people out there who said that his brother-in-law was dead, yet Grandpa Xian and the others said that her brother-in-law would be fine, and that he had only left for the time being. However, it had been 20 years, and she was all grown up. She wondered why wasn't he back yet. The Sky River Great Elder and Shun Luoxua sighed as well, thinking that over 20 years had passed just like that. Actually, they too didn't know if Yi Futian had truly been able to leave alive. While he did indeed say that he could retreat unscathed, it was still an enigma until the present day. They could only choose to believe that he was still alive and was already at the Divine Prefecture. He had only become a Run Huang when he left all those years ago. I think that it wouldn't be that easy for him to return. Shun Luoxua sighed and added. Those who came to the Origin Realm were all super cultivation forces. It would have probably taken Yi Futian considerably more time to return, for he had to, at the very least, get to higher levels of Renhuang realm after all. Coming to think about it, 20 years were still too short a time. I'm afraid that we won't be able to hold on, Lord Taixian sighed and said. We will be able to hold on, Grandpa Xian. He and the others will come back to see you. Huan Yinyu comforted him. Lord Taixian then nodded and smiled. I sure hope that I live to see that day. They then seemed to have sensed something all of a sudden as they talked. Lord Taixian and the Sky River Great Elder looked at the sky, and the murky eyes of Lord Taixian became sharp all of a sudden, piercing into the sky like swords. There were many powerful presences apparent, and none of them were familiar. There were even two extremely terrifying presences among them, who were every bit on par with him. Who is it this time? The cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy all looked up to the sky right away. They watched the clouds above rolled, and dazzling divine light of space rained down. A group of people then shot through the sky, and appeared high above. All of them then came to stand in the sky above the academy. When those people stopped moving, Lord Taixian, Sky River Great Elder, and the others seemed to be completely stunned. It seemed like they had spaced out instantly. The eyes of Fei Xue and Huan Yinyu were locked in place as well. It appeared as if time had stopped moving, as they looked at the one in the lead among those people. That man's silver hair billowed alongside his white robe in the wind, and he also sported very chiseled features on that handsome face of his. It was a very familiar sight for them all. A beaming smile was seen in the eyes of Lord Taixian, after he being stunned for quite some time. He looked incredibly relaxed at the moment, seemingly having released all of the tension he had accumulated over the years. Lord Taixian finally confirmed that that man had indeed lived back then, and had even returned alive. Sunlight shone off the weathered face of that old man, illuminating the wrinkles that covered his face. "You've returned," the old man said. His voice wasn't loud. His casual tone sounded somewhat relaxed, glad that the man had returned. Cough, cough. He then coughed for a bit after that. His aura appeared rather weak. That silver-haired figure in the air felt quite a heartache upon seeing that. He was also fuming deep down as he was told that Lord Taixian had suffered serious injuries. "What has happened throughout the years I've been gone?" he wondered. Jieyu, Yu Sheng, Wuchen, and the others aren't around. Where are they? And what is with Lord Taishuan's injuries? Why does the Heavenly Mandate Academy look so run down? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.